Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this new webinar of the ReInHerit project. This webinar, as you know, is framed in the Horizon 2020 ReInHerit project that is funded by the European Union. I want to let you know that this webinar has been recorded, video and audio recorded. So I'm going to start the presentation. After the presentation, I will invite you to participate in a survey, and then you can ask me any questions in this chat. You can see this chat to the right of your screen, where you can write all kind of questions I will answer at the end of the presentation. Okay, so my name is Jaime Lopez. I am a museologist, I am educator, I am exhibition coordinator, I am curator, I am consultant, and I am member of the Arte Sostenible, that is a non-profit organization based in Barcelona, with the purpose of to meet the needs of the population through socio-educational projects in the field of visual arts and culture to promote social and environmental sustainable development. So, as you can see, my organization is related to sustainability. That is the topic of today. Why this webinar? And that is, as you know, how to manage missions sustainably. The purpose of this webinar is to provide guidance and tips on basic principles of sustainability for professionals working in museums and cultural heritage sites. So this is aligned with the ReInHerit project that aims to propose a sustainable model of heritage management. This webinar, the target public is professionals like you, or even future professionals. Even everybody is, of course, invited, but it's mainly for professionals. Which are the objectives for this webinar? Well, the first objective is to clarify ideas about the concept of museum and sustainability and to understand how they are linked. The second objective is to reflect on the role of the 21st century museum and its challenges and opportunities to create more public value in a context of social and environmental sustainability. And the third objective is to offer guidelines and recommendations to encourage cultural heritage professionals to implement sustainable practices in their museum management. In order to answer this question, how to manage museums sustainably, we should first to think about these two words, these two terms, sustainability and museums, because you may have a wrong idea of what sustainable is or about what museum is. So we need to think about these terms and to find accurate definitions in order, I repeat, to answer properly this question. So what is sustainability and what is a museum? Okay, so sustainability is a term that, there are so many definitions of sustainability has been arised during the years, but sustainability means to maintain a balance between three dimensions. Right? These dimensions are the environmental dimension, the economic dimension, and the social dimension. So the idea is to create a status of the balance of these three dimensions to assure a quality of life on Earth. The idea is to promote a work with an environmental and social progress, but at the same time maintaining biodiversity, maintaining a healthy environment. Okay, so we are talking about a long-term goal, what is sustainability. And in order to access to that status, to reach that status, we need to do something, right? So it's when we are talking about sustainable development. This concept appeared for the first time in 1987 when this report was written, a report called Our Common Future by the United Nations, and is also called the Brundtland Report because it was proposed by this former prime minister from Norway, that says that sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And from this year, this term started to appear everywhere, started to be popularized, okay? So, analyzing this term, we can think that sustainable development is a process. It's a pathway to reach the sustainability, to reach the status of sustainability. Sustainability is an status, no? It's a long-term goal, while sustainable development is the process to reach that goal. And at the same time, it's important to consider that this process is participatory. That means that everyone should be involved in the action, not actively, because it's very important to implement all the principles of sustainability in order to reach this status. Even museums, not only governments, not only companies, museums, people, everyone. The program that better support this sustainable development, as you know, is the so-called agenda, the Agenda 2030 that was approved by the United Nations in 2015. And this agenda that is crucial in this process includes 17 sustainable development goals, as you can see here in this slide, and every single goal has different targets to achieve, many targets. I think they are like 169 targets. These goals are usually grouped in 5 categories that are the famous 5 Ps: people, prosperity, planet, peace, partnership. So we have to face these environmental, social, and economic challenges through these development goals. Okay, so I think that it is clear now what is sustainable development, and now we are going to explain what is museum work. Here we see the current mission definition proposed by the ICON because, as you know, museums, we have, more than 200 years of museums, and the concept, definition of museum has been evolving through the years. At the same time, the society and the museum itself was evolving as an institution, from a very static institution, as you know, to a very dynamic institution that is today. So this is museum definition is very important because it's a united definition. That means that in the process of writing this definition, even approving this definition, have participated a lot of professionals from different cultures, a lot of organizations, national, international committees, and finally, last month of August was approved in the last extraordinary meeting assembly of the ICON in Prague. So this museum definition is the most accurate definition of museum today. Let's read the definition. A museum is a non-profit government permanent institution in the service of society that researches, collects, conserves, interprets, and exhibits tangible and intangible heritage. Okay, this first paragraph is really repeating, maintaining the same idea of museum that we had in the previous definition of museum from 2007. Okay, so in this first paragraph, the definition is still focused on the collections, okay, and the collections management, okay? And then let's see the second paragraph that says, open to the public, accessible and inclusive, museums foster diversity and sustainability. They operate and communicate ethically, professionally, and with the participation of communities, offering varied experiences for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. So it's very important, this second part, because it's utilizing some concepts that were not before in the museum definition. And this concept links us to the community, to the people. For the first time, the word sustainability appears in a museum definition, even the other concepts. So that means that the museum has changed. It has opened a new wave in order to include people and society and sustainability in the definition. And when in this definition refers to sustainability, in my opinion, I think it refers to the environmental aspect of sustainability, because if we think about the other concepts like accessibility, inclusivity, ethics, diversity, communities, participation, that links to the social dimensions of sustainability. But it doesn't matter. What they want to say that this is a very complete definition of museum. I want also to mention this UNESCO recommendation from 2015, that is the recommendation concerning the protection and promotion of museums and collections, their diversity and their role in society. The recommendation says that museums have a great potential to raise public awareness of the value of cultural and natural heritage and on the responsibility of all citizens to contribute to the care and transmission. Museums also support economic development, notably through cultural and creative industries and tourism. So here we can see how even following this recommendation, museums participate in the societal and in the economic part of sustainability. So said that, we can now reflect about the museum of 21st century. So it's a museum that should be 100% involved in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have to think in a museum that have overcome the traditional idea of a static institution to become a social entity, okay? So museum is not anymore a building, it's not anymore a collection. Museum is not about people, it's like a social hub, it's a cultural social hub, could be defined as well as a social corporation, a social enterprise, okay? For people and for environment. So museums now are participatory or should be participatory, inclusive, diverse, accessible to everyone, and eco-friendly. So this new museum institution is a great museum to support sustainable values, okay? And people, of course, come first. So this is a very nice definition, I think, and clear definition of missions. But how many missions today are following these principles? All museums, few museums, not all museums really. Some of them have been achieved this sustainable status, but many of them are still in the process of transformation into a sustainable institution. Okay, it's important to know that because there's a lot of paper, recommendation, resolution, etc., but they don't pass from the paper into the action, okay? So there are still many conventional museums, they don't want to move, or they don't know how to move to the other side to become a museum of 21st century. So to start this process of transformation, it's very important, first of all, to know who is going to be involved in this process and how we are going to start with this process. Let me to explain to you how to do that. Starting with the first question, who we have to consider first to the governance of the museums. The governance is the people who are making decisions for the museums. So the first thing that this governance should do is to understand, to believe in the sustainable values. And of course, to commit with them, because many of them, they commit at all. A lot of words, papers, but no commitment. So it's important to commit, and this commitment should be reflected in, for instance, the mission of the museums. The mission are the principles of the museums, the aim of the museums. So what the governance body should do is to rewrite the mission of the museums, including the sustainable aspects there, okay, in the mission. And as well, to work in a vision of the museum. The visions are like medium-term goals to achieve. Okay, we can achieve the vision for 2030, 2040, etc. And in this vision, this should include include and approve of all kind of policies related to environment, policies related to society, to the staff of the museum, to society, to communities, and it's very important as well to include part of the items of the budgets that are going to implement the measures for sustainability in the museum. So the whole governance body should be, I repeat, committed with that process. But it's not only the governance, because once all these measures has been approved, it's important the staff of the museum, from the director's office to all the areas and departments of the museums, and the employees should be involved in that process. So they should know what it's about sustainability, so they should be trained, and the governance as well should be appointing responsibles of sustainability in the museums. Maybe the museum can create new positions, right? Maybe the museums can hire external companies to do this job, or private consultants, but it's important to deliver responsibilities and people who know how to do this job, even to train people inside the museum who expand their expertise, and to even to put in function all these sustainable aspects, okay? So managers and training. So this is who. And then the next question is, how are we going to do this job? Okay, first of all, it's very important that we have to write an action plan, a sustainability action plan for the museum. That is could be a very complex document in which we are going to consider every of the three aspects of sustainability: the environmental, the social, and the and the financial, the economic aspect in all this action plan. So what we have to do is to decide what measure are we going to take, to set tasks for that measure, to decide who is going to do that task, which department is involved in that task, which one or more, depending on the type of sustainable development aspect. Then it's necessary to implement that task during a certain period of time, to monitor all the process. Okay, it's important to measure what we are doing, and then to assess the result of this task. Well, if we have achieved the goal we wanted. Finally, we should report everything. For instance, once a year, it's important to show what we have been achieved during this period of time. Okay, so for instance, if we want to fight against the climate change, for instance, for environmental issues, maybe we could decide to use less energy. Okay, so what can we do for that? For instance, I don't know, to change the electricity system, the lighting system, for instance. Like we can decide to an installation of LED lights in the museum. So we had to think who is going to be involved, what area of the museum. That should be the area of administration, of course, maybe the Department of Operations, and this person should be in charge of this task, to implement the task, to monitor how much energy we are saving from that change, and to assess all this information in order to report it. Okay? And we can do the same with every single task. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to give you some tips and recommendations, like a starting point. We don't have time to go in depth with any measure, but at least I'm going to list it. And it's important to know that every single of the measures I'm going to recommend are linked to the different areas of the museums and the different departments. So I have divided the museum in 6 big areas, and then you can see who is going to be involved in that areas. We can start with the governance and administration area. It's a huge area with departments. For instance, the director's office. We can find the human resources department. We can find the accounting economy department. We can find the law department or the legal department, the operations department, etc. Okay. So what tips do I recommend? For instance, to make the museum's building efficient in sustainability. I'm talking about the building. It's important that the European Green Deal says that the buildings cause 40% of energy consumption, and I think it's 38 or 39% of greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. So what do we have to do? Of course, to reduce the energy in the museums, to reduce the gas we are using in the museum, to manage properly the waste of the museums, to promote recycling, to isolate the museum from outside. The insulation is very important, not only for the collections, but also for the neighborhood. Maybe if we are making so much noise. So it's important these sustainability measures linked to the environmental aspect. We can encourage museum staff in sustainable aspect as well, encourage them in recycling, reusing materials, using as well office supplies that is eco-sustainable, and maybe we can encourage this staff to go to the museum in public transportation, in bicycle maybe. we need to get certificates and comply with laws and conventions in sustainability. So these laws and conventions, I'm talking about national laws, of course, but also recommendations and conventions from the UNESCO, from the ICON, etc. is important, and as well from the ISO, that is the International Office for Standardization, and this private company is great because they have designed one single certification for each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. That is great, so we can do that, no? We can get these certificates. Then we can diversify sources of income following ethical standards of fundraising, of course. It's important for the mission to assure they have enough fundings, but not all depending on public funding. It's important to look for income from private funding, but at the same time that inside of the ethical standard of fundraising. I mean, that we should know, for instance, that sponsor, that company who is funding the mission, what kind of activities are they doing, where is that money coming from, based in ethical standards, like, by the way, the standard of the Code of Ethics of the ICON. The fifth recommendation is to develop collaboration between museums. This is very important, and in fact, it's one of the goals of the ReInHerit projects. Okay, so it's very important because collaborating between museums, not only we can grow as institutions for the people, we can even save money in this collaboration. We can share human and material resources, and even we can help a small, medium museum with less resources. So this is great. Then we can establish equality policies for staff to promote diversity and inclusion. This should be included in policies approved by the government body of the museums to assure that any kind of people have the same rights in the museums, the same rights of everything, of salary, etc., equity, and no matter the gender, no matter the sexual orientation, the religion, the ethnicity. And then to end is to enhance the local economy. We can enhance the economy in many ways. For instance, contracting local companies for the museum, or social companies as well, like, for instance, promoting fair trade products in the store of the museum. The second area of the museum involved in sustainability should be collections management and care. And in this area, it's important that, well, in this area, you know, we can find the departments of conservation departments where our curators are working there. We can find conservators, we can find registers, people who work in documentation, in exhibition, etc. So first of all, curators should be more involved in sustainability by curating exhibition related to sustainable, social, and environmental issues, very important. We curators should even curate some exhibitions, inviting the community, inviting people to participate, as I will explain later on. And curators maybe should think about new narratives about the collection, you know, to create. I'm talking about the colonization for museums who has their roots in the empire, you know, who have been created by big collections from that time. So maybe curators could change the narrative in order to create this diversity and explanation to people. So this is curation, and even it's important to know that it's important to foster the work in art museums of artists committed to sustainable development. Then we should apply sustainability principles in cultural heritage conservation, preservation. That means to use products that are good for the environment, that do not pollute, and not only for treatment, for artworks, or for all kinds of objects, even for packaging, even for traveling these objects. And then to follow ethics standards on accessioning and the accessioning museum objects. It's important to consider when it is offered one object to the museum, to consider to which community this artwork or this object used to belong. It's very important, and to know what is the provenance of the object, if it has been exported legally, etc. So we should follow standards like, for instance, the standard that the ICOM recommend. Well, this also links even to the colonization again, because sometimes we can think about returning some of these items, that is the accessioning, to these original owners, right? But this is a very complex topic that maybe we could address in the forum of the ReInHerit Digital Hub. The third area of the mission is the digitalization area. So it's important to teach digital skills and competencies in mission staff for digital transformation. Not everyone in the mission knows about digitalization. So we need to teach, to train these people for them to apply these new technologies in their projects, including curators. Then to use digital innovation to make museum more accessible and engaging, not only for people who go to the museum and, for instance, they have immersive experiences with gamification, with virtual reality, etc., all kinds of devices that we can offer as well, but even to visit the exhibitions of the museum digitally, with catalog, with digital visits, etc., to engage people. And then it's important to assess the environmental impact of digitalization in museums, because the museum, like any company, is continuously producing, processing data. And this data that is stored in many servers outside of the museum is spending a lot of energy. And the problem is that this energy is normally is a contaminant energy, like carbon, etc., because it's very common that we can find these companies in places where the energy is very cheap. So it's important to think about if these companies, these servers, are really following standards of preventing the nature, damaging the nature. So it's important, for instance, to choose these companies that are using clean energy, like, for instance, solar energy. Okay. The next area of the mission should be the education and public programming mission. Again, we can find all kinds of education departments with educators, with all kinds of people involved in the education and handling with communities. Here we can find pedagogues, etc. So it's important to implement innovative educational programs centered on the visitor. I want to talk about innovative, I mean new. It's important to think that we have to make the visitor the center of these programs. Okay, so we need the visitor to be active. It is not only about teaching the visitor concepts. It's as well about increasing the confidence of the visitor. And it's very important as well to make the visitor to feel not only more confident, but also to develop their critical thinking. That is as well very important. We need to foster long-term relationships with audiences, local and global. Very important to connect to the community and to make the museums a friendly space for these communities and include these communities in many of the projects of the museums. In this way, finally, the museum will be achieving this social role and then to offer programs and services that are accessible to everyone, accessible in terms of experience. I mean, to every kind of people, even considering people with any kind of disability. So we can design tailored programs, resources for these people with mental or physical disabilities, for them also to make profit, to benefit from the museum, of course. The next area is the exhibition display and design area. So we have to design environmentally sustainable exhibitions. That means that we have to choose materials that do not pollute. We have to think about recycling. We have to think, for instance, cardboard. We have to think about using, for instance, eco painting. We can, for instance, install LED lighting systems. And we even have to think about the impact of transportation for objects between museums when we are talking about moving objects for instance, temporary exhibitions. Okay, we have to lower the impact in nature. Then we have to apply effective evaluation methodologies to exhibition in terms of exhibition design, so we can test in advance these exhibitions in order to know the circulation works, in order to know if the text is understandable for people, and the level of the information we are giving. For instance, the size of the text, for instance, and even though any kind of aspect related to the design of the exhibition. So we can test it in order to create a more effective exhibition for people. And then to incorporate new technologies and tools to make exhibition accessible. I'm talking about accessibility in terms of mobility experience of people in the museums, creating like wide highways, spaces for wheelchairs, even all kinds of devices to allow people with disability to enjoy the exhibition. For instance, tactile devices, and use sensory items as well, no? Olfactive items, or visual or auditive items for these people. And the last area of the mission is the marketing and communication area. So we should design remarketing campaigns. This is very important. That, well, in this department as well, all people related to communication, community managers, people who are working with the brand of the museum, marketing people are working there. Many times these departments are very linked to the missions office, by the way. So we need to design remarketing campaigns, like, for instance, to make the museum more friendly with environment and society, okay? To sell that idea of the museums. And we can do that, for instance, with the prices. You know, we can find discounting prices for people who are in the museums in public transportation on carpooling, for instance. Or we can organize, the museum can organize all type of campaigns, for instance, collecting garbage for the streets, or planting trees, or whatever, like to attract the audiences, the people, and to go to the museums, and to foster this identity of the museum that is compromised with social and with environmental aspects. So we had to develop these remarketing campaigns that should be communicated in communication principles. So establish sustainable communication principles from museums. It's important to work in the brand of the building like an institution devoted to sustainability through these communication actions. And at the same time, the communication should be totally inclusive. Inclusive, I mean, in terms of people, of gender, I mean, and even when using photographs, we could include people from different ethnicities, not only white people, by the way. And finally, to encourage public participation through social networks. This is very important for community managers to create Facebook groups or Instagram stories, etc., and user-generated production, generation of information. So invite two people to generate information in social media for the museum. Okay, that is very important. Okay, these are the 22 tips I wanted to recommend you to start the process of transformation of the museums. And now what we are going to do is to give you some few examples of how some museums are in following this sustainability. Like, for instance, the Museum of Science in Trento, in this city in the northern part of Italy, that is very important. It's very committed, for instance, to environmental awareness, because they have recently opened a new area, a new permanent part of the collection devoted to social issues, to raise awareness of people about social and environmental aspects. The museum as well has changed the vocabulary, the terms they are using. They are renovating this. For instance, they are not talking anymore about paleontology or zoology. They are talking about social issues. They are talking about sustainability and other concepts more in according with the museums today. Then we have a very nice, good example of accessibility in every sense, not only about mobility, but only in narratives and in programs, like the Met Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. They have a great program with all kinds of resources, all kind of people even devoted to help people with disabilities to enjoy the museum, because they don't only adapt everything to people with problems with deaf people, blind people, people with dementia, all kind of mental situations, but they are also inviting these people to be part of the museum, like, for instance, organizing debates between people that are deaf and disabled people to talk about art, for instance. No, so this museum is really very involved in accessibility. It's a very good example. Then we have, of course, these three museums that belongs to the ReInHerit project. These are part of the partners of the ReInHerit project. In fact, we have the Bank of Cyprus Cultural Foundation that is the coordinator of the project. We have the Grass Museum in Austria, and we have the Museum of Cycladic Art, who has been working in 3 exhibitions that are going to be open in the following weeks, in the following months. And it's very important to consider this because it's a very great example of sustainability in terms of co-creation, collaboration between these 3 institutions, in terms of digitalization, and in terms of sustainability exhibition display. Because this exhibition, these are traveling exhibitions, are made with sustainable elements, materials, made from people, from local people. That is very important. We can reuse this material. We can share this material because we can replicate the exhibitions in other museums. In fact, we will invite other museums like yours, for instance, to participate in this project. It's very important as well because they are reducing the contamination, because many of the objects are going to be replicated digitally with holograms, with many digital systems that we allow people to see the objects in 3D in the exhibition with projections. No? Very important. And at the same time, they are going to invite all museums to be part of the great digital collection about these 3 exhibitions. So it's a very important point of starting. These exhibitions as well are very committed to sustainable development. In fact, because they are addressing social issues. One exhibition is about conflict resolution and handling. The other is about gender roles, diversity, and the other is about craftsmanship, environmental issues, etc. So it's directly related as well to the sustainable aspects. You will know more about this exhibition very soon. Okay, the next example I wanted to show is the Brooke Baxter Museum and Art Gallery. This is in Derbyshire in England. And this is a very good example of the accessioning and the colonizing museums, because this museum received a big collection with artifacts from communities from the Pacific and from the American Indian. And this collection used to belong to one library who closed in 2008. So they received the collection and they didn't know what to do with the collection, because they didn't know how to handle this collection, even though their mission is not related to this type of objects. So they decided to collaborate with other museums in order to push this, to relocate these objects in other museums. So finally, they decided to relocate the Pacific objects in one museum in Bristol that is related to these topics. And then they have this problem with the American Indian objects, so they contacted the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., so for the American Indian Museum. And finally, they started the research, and they found the tribes, the original tribes where that objects used to belong. So finally, they decided to give these objects to the original communities. Then they have this great example of community engagement and participation, talking about the Brooklyn Museum, that is the museum, a museum pioneer in crowd-curated exhibition. So the Brooklyn Museum started in 2008 with this exhibition called Click, in which they invited all kinds of photographers, amateur, professional photographers, to send photographs about the District of New York, about the district, about the cities, the streets, the buildings, the people of the neighborhood. Once the museum collected all these photographs, they allowed people to participate in the selection of the photograph for the exhibition. And when selecting, they created an application for people to vote the 10 most important photos that they consider for the show. And this was very interesting because in this process, people who were voting, they have to say they were expert in photography, they have some knowledge, they have no idea. And it was very interesting because some of the photographs selected by people with no idea were the same selected by people with experts, expert curators. So why not to consider the criteria of people with no knowledge? It's a way to democratize museums as well. And it was this exhibition had a very great impact in the neighborhood because among other things, many people from the neighborhood visited the museum for the first time. And then later on, they organized a new exhibition called Go, in which they invited all kind of studio for artists in the district in Brooklyn. And these people, these artists, were receiving visitors every single weekend from people in the neighborhood, and they were voting the best artists. So finally, 10 artists, the most voted 10 artists, were allowed to exhibit in the museum. Look, with any kind of problem. Is a very important example of museum open to the public, open to the community, because we don't want elite museums anymore. And finally, I wanted to commend this museum that is the Guggenheim mission in Bilbao, that I think is one of the best example of mission who has that has fulfilled all the environmental, economic, and social aspect of sustainability. Okay, because it's a mission that has committed totally from writing social, writing environmental policies, implementing them, committing to society, integrating not only the community but even artists from the area to the museum, diversify equal opportunities for staff in the museum with a social responsibility and with a special impact in the environment at a very high level. So I recommend you to read the report that they publish every single year. It's in the website to read everything because it's a very good practice to follow for every museum. Okay, so before starting with the survey, I'm going to recommend you the ReInHerit resources that you can find. First of all, if possible, you could follow us in our social media. You can follow us in Instagram, and you can even enter the ReInHerit Digital Hub, where you can see all kind of information, resources like webinars like this one. You can participate in the forum. It's very important because we have this forum with all kind of topics to address. We have a meeting every Wednesday in the afternoon, but we can open new forums for the subjects, for the topics you are interested. You're open to sign in and to participate. I also want you to recommend the Museums app. That is the name of our podcast. We release one podcast every 2 weeks. And in the following year, in this year, by the way, we are going to publish the Handbook of Museum Collaboration and the Best Practice Guide, together with more information, digital even information, in the ReInHerit Digital Hub. So I encourage you to use our ReInHerit resources. Okay, so now it's time to do the survey. Here we have the first question, that is how many, one second, how many of the sustainable tips mentioned in this webinar has the museum or cultural institution where you were implemented? One of the 22 sustainable tips. You have to select one option. Okay, we have the second one. What do you think is the main obstacle museums face in becoming a more sustainable institution? And the third one is, in your opinion, what is the most important sustainable advantage of collaboration and communication between museums? Okay, so we analyzed the first question. So less than half of the measures has been implemented by the museums. You see, some of the museums, none, and more have only 8%. Okay, very interesting. So we have still a long process to follow. Second question, what do you think is the main obstacle museums face in becoming more sustainable? Is the lack of knowledge and experience of staff to establish effective sustainable action. I totally agree, but the lack of real commitment is also very important. Because sometimes we have funding, but we don't use that funding for sustainable issues. And the third question is, in your opinion, what is the most important sustainable advantage in collaboration communication? Is diversifying audiences and communicates to serve. Okay, that is minimizing the use of natural resources and reducing their funding cost is also important. Very well, so I think I'm going to see if you have any question, you can write. Yeah, let's see, the blooming is okay, welcome, the webinar, okay, I don't see any question. Anyhow, you can join our forum. We can open a room for sustainability aspects for any kind of topic related to sustainability, and you can be part of this project. So thank you very much for your attendance. Hope this webinar was profitable for you and for your institution and for your future emissions, and see you in future webinars at the ReInHerit project. Have a good day.